Thanks very much. So my name is Arian. As Jason mentioned earlier, I'm CEO and founder of a company called Singspiel. We went through a jolt here at Mars Accelerator about a year and a half ago. And we graduated about a year ago, September 2013. And ever since then, we decided to reside our company at Mars and grow our business and build our company at the very same building. At a very high level, my company, Singspiel, is a software that helps beginning students to practice and learn music more effectively. The way it works is by utilizing the microphone on the smartphone devices or tablets to listen to the sound of students playing a musical instrument and capturing relevant musical features from that sound to give real-time, instant feedback to the students on their computer device. So similar to how Duolingo or Rosetta Stone works, but for music learners. Today I decided to talk a little bit about fundraising because it's something that I recently went through. And I thought rather than making it more specific about my company, let's open it up to the whole public, everyone who's attending today, and maybe it might be more relevant to the general audience today. So anyone over here has raised money for a startup before? Perfect. 4 or 5 names. Anyone is an investor here? I think you're from 2. Perfect. Okay, so I assume majority of you guys haven't raised money or you're not an investor. I'm not trying to raise money. I've already raised money, so you're good. Just quickly, I want to go through this. In the tech startup scene, there are 3 different stages of raising funding. For a lot of folks that go through accelerator programs and incubators, initially, what you're trying to do is to raise few tens of thousands of dollars to just get things started. VCs call it seed stage investment, but we really just a few $1,000s to test your idea. And then later on, when you're trying to raise $500,000 to $1 million to $3 million, depending on where you're trying to raise money. In Toronto, is less compared to Silicon Valley. But really, at that stage, when you're trying to build your company, it's called Series A. And when you're trying to raise few $1 million to grow your business and accelerate your growth, it's called Series B and Series C and above. What I want to talk to today is raising money from the perspective of entrepreneurs and what are the steps that you have to go through to be able to raise money for your startup. When you're a first-time entrepreneur, I'm not talking about some of the entrepreneurs or founder of Twitter or something that you just have to have an idea and you get money. But for some of us like myself who are a first-time entrepreneur, it's hard to raise money. And just having the idea is not enough. So when you're trying to go through investment process or fundraising process, you're faced with a whole bunch of risks that are assumed, and all the odds are basically against you. And so they're going to assume the worst thing about you when you're trying to do your fundraising. Some of those risks is like a risk involved with your founding team. Are you the right person to do this business? Do you have the skill set that requires to build that business? What about your product? Is it actually solving a real problem, or is it just a technology spin-off out of university? Some of the risk that my company had was around technology risk. We had to build somewhat sophisticated, artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms, and at the time we had no idea how to do it, and we were trying to fundraise too. So it was a balance of how to solve this technology problem versus raising fund. Some of the other risks are go-to-market, such as, so let's say you build a product, but how are you going to bring it to the market and adopt user adoption? And as well as revenue. Some startup companies are really good at gaining that initial momentum and traction, but the problem is they don't have really any revenue model. So all of a sudden you have a startup who has 2-3 million users, but no revenue model, so you can't really monetize that. So these are a whole bunch of risks that you face initially when you're trying to do fundraising as an entrepreneur. And your job as a CEO and whoever is in charge of doing the fundraising is to work with the investors to de-risk every single one of these throughout your fundraising process. So if you're doing seed level investment, most of the question marks are around your fundraising, around your funding team as well as product risk. So a lot of the time investors, because you don't have any portfolio, for my case, I graduated 2 years ago from Waterloo, and I went through Jolt Accelerator, so I was literally 12 months out of school, and I was trying to fundraise from investors in Toronto. And it was difficult. I didn't have any resume. I didn't have any experience with startups. So a lot of the question marks were around, are you capable of running a business? It's beyond just building a product and being able to program. So I had to work with investors to prove that I'm the right person, I am capable, I have the skill set that it takes to take that business to the next phase, as well as product risk. So some of the things you can do around product is by proving or showing initial market adoption or customer evidence from some of your customers in the market. Few things to know about how to get connected to investors. One piece of advice that it's actually the last advice, but I'm going to mention it first, is never, ever, ever cold call or cold email investors. It just doesn't work. If you try to do that, your chances are probably close to zero. If you're not smart enough or you don't have enough ingenuity to reach out to an investors through other entrepreneurs or your network, you're not probably the right person to do that business. So for us, one of the events that really worked well for us was Demo Days, because we went through the Jolt Demo Day here and we got connected to a whole bunch of investors, as well as introductions through other entrepreneurs. Two key things that you must know about investors is when you're trying to reach out to investors, you have to know the fund size. So if you're trying to do seed level investment, trying to raise $500,000, there's no point talking to Omer's Ventures where they only do Series B or Series D sometimes. So really understand what sort of investment criteria each firm has, as well as there's estimated life of the fund. So you have to understand, because a lot of these VC firms, institutional investors, they go and raise money from their LPs. And they have usually life cycles between 5 to 10 years. And if you're trying to raise funding close to the end of their cycle, your chances are zero because they don't have money to give you. So you have to really understand this, because investors won't tell you any of these. They'll take meetings with you and they'll continue conversations, but that may take 2 years or 3 years without really you. And your main job as a CEO is to get the funding done and get back to the main part, which is building your business. So I know I'm running short of time, so I'm just going to jump into the last slide. Keep one thing in mind. Raising money is not actually a success. It just provides you the resources that you need to build your business and get back to the hard things, which is building your business, going after customers, and growing your revenue. Thank you. Go ahead.
Is there a Twitter handle, a directory of serious investors who really want to invest in either Toronto tech events or world tech events, or for that matter, any kind of investment?
Sure. The question was, is there any Twitter profile
Directory
or a YouTube channel or directory that you can, of serious investors? The problem is you can't really define serious investors. There are no resources online that you can define investors based on how serious they are. A lot of it is the entrepreneur's job to figure out how serious they are. Some of it is easy to find out. If you go on Angel List on Crunchbase, you can see, for example, an institutional investors, how many investments have they made in the past 2 or 3 years. If they haven't made any investment in the past 3 years, chances are they don't even have any money to invest in you. Having said that, the investors will take your meeting, and they will take meetings one after another, thinking that, and you puts you into thinking that, well, there are possibilities, but really, you have to understand if there's really money available in the funds.
Yeah, I have a question about your tech. So
Sure.
You said that the tech curve for your company was pretty high, and just to mix it in with fundraising, did your MVP already have the machine learning and the advanced stuff, or did you do that at a later point when you got money?
Sure. The question was, given the fact that our product is technology heavy, did you have any MVP or some of the technology built before doing fundraising? To answer your question, so my company is actually a spin-off from our university project. I went to Waterloo, and this was my thesis project, me and my co-founder. So we built some of the algorithms initially during university, and after graduation, instead of taking full-time jobs, we decided to build a company and commercialize the technology. So we had some of that built, and our project actually got selected as the best engineering project in Waterloo. So that was enough proof point or evidence for investors that the technology, at least we had enough evidence that we can pull off what it takes to build the technology, even though a lot of the work wasn't done when we were trying to do fundraising. So it is important to have the MVP, yes. Yes.
When you were doing fundraising, would you take any size of funds, or did you have a minimum in mind for each investor?
Sure. The question is, did you have a minimum amount that you wanted to take from each investor? Is it correct? So I had a certain goal in mind that I wanted to reach out to that level, and my goal was to raise that specific number. And then, but really, you can't plan for any of that. You don't know. Some investors promise and commit to certain levels, but they don't actually end up giving you the check. And one piece of advice on the side is during the fundraising process, you oftentimes get a lot of people who say that they're interested, and they never say no, but they never commit. So the only time that you can actually say that you have successfully did your fundraising is when you have the check in your bank account. Other than that, you get a lot of interest, but they're really no commitment. So, but always, one other piece of advice, always try to raise more than what you need, because you don't know how successful your next round of fundraising is.
How many people did you have working using your product, like before you actually approached investors?
Sure. So the question is how many users or customers we had before doing fundraising. As I mentioned earlier, since this was a seed level investment, a lot of seed level is just selling the dream. Having said that, we did have customers and clients initially. So we closed 2 music institutions in Toronto that were using our product. Each of them, they had about 3,000 students. And we were in talks with one of the largest music institutions in Canada, around 40,000 music students at that time. Go ahead. One last question.
Was determining the valuation of the company one of the hardest parts in terms of presenting the pitching to the investor?
Sure. The question is determining the valuation of company, whether determining the valuation of company was one of the hardest part. To be honest, at least that's from my experience in Toronto, you don't have a lot of choices here, at least at the seed level, because when you're doing Series A and Series B, the numbers and traction and your revenue speaks for themselves, and you basically have to show your numbers. But when you're doing seed level, it's a matter of market demand, and you have no control over some of that. Having said that, as an entrepreneur, you have a choice to take some of those valuations or not. We ended up taking an investment which was based on a convertible note with no cap, so we didn't really price around, or there was no valuation involved. It was basically a debt financing. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Man. Thanks.